Hello everyone, just a quick little intro before the video starts. This video has been an absolute nightmare to make. I was about halfway through editing it and my system crashed and I lost all of the footage, so I had to do everything again. But I managed to get it done, and here it is. I'm really proud of this video, so if you like it and you like my channel, please subscribe, drop a like on the video, and let me know in the comments what was the most crazy salary, and if you were in Formula 1, how much do you think you'd be paid? Alright, enjoy the video, guys. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Sir Meerkat, and welcome back to the Moto Meerkat channel. Today, I wanted to investigate what the drivers on the 2020 F1 grid were actually being paid. I managed to collate all of these numbers together from different sites on the internet, but obviously they're not stone cold facts, they are just estimates, and also these numbers don't really include what they're getting from sponsors, or equally what some of them are paying out to the teams in sponsors. So let's get this video underway, starting off with our resident backmarkers, Williams. So Williams have a new entry for 2020, the man called Nicholas Latifi. So he's come up from Formula 2, and he actually does not have a wage for 2020. So I've got his wage down as £0, poor lad, but actually, he's not a particularly poor lad, because Mr. Daddy Latifi owns a global brand called Safina Foods, and they bring in around £25 million to Williams. So last year, in the seat that Nicholas Latifi has replaced, Robert Kubica was taking it up, obviously, Mr. Giga Kubica, and he brought around £12 million through his Polish sponsor PKN Orlen. And even before that, Valtteri Bottas, who is obviously now with Mercedes, brought in around 6.75 million through his Finnish sponsor to get up into the seat with Williams. So this seems to be a little bit of a trend. Williams are enjoying taking in money from all of these paid drivers. However, it seems to be the more money that they take in through these paid drivers, the more points they seem to keep losing in the Constructors' Championship. So you could say, possibly, hopefully, that this new money, this £25 million, I will just reiterate that is a crazy amount of money for someone to be bringing in to a Formula 1 team. Hopefully this money can help Williams out and help with the problems that they've been having, why they've only got one championship point last year. Hopefully they can improve on that, but equally, as I just said, as they seem to be taking in more money, they seem to be losing points, so maybe this could be a turnaround, but also possibly not. And in addition to Nicholas Latifi, they have retained George Russell, who moved up from Formula 2 to start in Formula 1 last year. So his wage has increased from 140k to 160k, so only 20,000 increase, but realistically, he's just sat at Williams to gain experience and just improve himself in a Formula 1 car. The Williams seat is not a fantastic seat, as I've just been saying. Williams don't have this cash. Even I know they're bringing in bloody 25 million from Latifi, but still, all of that is needing to be pumped into their R&D, their development, sorting out this car to make it better, especially for the 2021 regulation change. And also, I think George Russell should be fine with receiving a lower paycheck than possibly some of the other rookies that came in with him, because he knows, or at least hopes, that soon, possibly 2021, he's going to be moving up into the Mercedes role. Whether that's partnering Hamilton, partnering Bottas, or partnering someone completely different, we'll have to wait and see. So moving on to our second team is Haas, the American Formula 1 team. And I'm going to be starting off with Romain Grosjean, whose wage for 2020 is £900,000. So this is one of the biggest drops in salary from last year. He's lost around £500,000 in wages from last year. Obviously, I can't say for sure what that's for, but it's probably due to his drop off in form. He was paid £500,000 more than Magnussen last year, so his wages dropped to the same as Magnussen for this year, because Magnussen blew him out the water in the championship. He lost to Magnussen 20 points to 8 points in the drivers' standings. A lot of people expected Grosjean to completely be losing his seat for this year. A lot of people thought that they'd take Hülkenberg on, even though he has had clashes with Magnussen in the past. He did seem like the better driver, but obviously with the loss of Rich Energy as Haas's title sponsor, who were, well, supposedly bringing in lots of money to Haas, they now don't have this extra cash to throw around, and they've had to drop Roman's pay cut, and they obviously then could not take on a better driver of Nico Hülkenberg, who would want more money than Grosjean would. And his teammate, Kevin Magnussen, there's very little to say, honestly. As I said, he outperformed Roman, so I feel like it would have been unfair to keep Roman on a higher paycheck. Even maybe still slightly unfair to have them on the same paycheck, but I mean that's only fair for the team and maybe keeps it a bit better in team relationships. I'm not sure, because there's other teams later on the list where they've got huge discrepancy between the drivers and they seem to be working much better, so I guess we'll have to wait and see. But as I said, yeah, very little to say, staying the same as last year, £900,000, and we'll have to see how Haas do this year. Next up, we've got Alfa Romeo. So their younger driver, Antonio Giovinazzi, has stayed at the same wage as he had last year. That's £175,000. So at the moment, he's really just a seat holder. He didn't hugely prove himself last year, but they didn't really, like, Ferrari didn't really have anyone that they wanted to replace him with in the young driver program. We've got Mick Schumacher coming up, which I don't know. I think I'm going to have to make a video about him because I have differing opinions to a lot of people on Mick Schumacher. But Mick Schumacher definitely has not proven himself enough yet. Even Ferrari could see that to bring him up this year into Formula One. Whether they will bring him up next year, we'll have to wait and see. And his teammate, Kimi Räikkönen, obviously moved down from Ferrari to Alfa Romeo last year. So his wage has stayed the same as well as Antonio Giovinazzi, stayed at 3.5 mil. So that's quite a discrepancy. Obviously, Kimi Räikkönen is a world champion, has loads of race wins with Ferrari and all of that. So he definitely deserves to have a higher paycheck than Antonio Giovinazzi. Could this be Kimi Räikkönen's last year in the sport? Is that why they kept him at the same wage? They didn't want to drop him off. They might make him feel unwelcome in the team then if they drop his wage. And also, he has been extremely instrumental in the team's growth and allowing for them to be sort of a Ferrari B team. But he's been able to bring all the knowledge that he gained from all his time at Ferrari, bring that to Alfa Romeo and say, hey, this is what we need to do, because he is an absolutely no-nonsense bloke. Moving on to the pink boys of Racing Point. So, first driver I'm going to talk about is Lance Stroll. So he's had his wage stay exactly the same as last year, £900,000. So I was just thinking, how is his wage decided? Like, Daddy Stroll owns Racing Point. How does his dad just sit down and go, alright son, I'm going to be paying you £900,000 again? And he's like, Dad, well, I want more for next year. So in addition to this, Sergio Perez is being paid £2.5 million. So that's again the same as they paid him last year. However, what does Stroll think about that? Like, obviously, Perez, well, opinion, Perez is the better driver than Stroll, but I feel like a lot of people believe that. And he has outperformed him last year. So that's definitely a reason for why he should be being paid more than Stroll. But equally, Daddy Stroll owns the team. Like, surely Lance has got to be like, Dad, come on, bump my wage up a little bit here, come on. But also equally, if he owns the team, this can't, like, the 900k that he's getting from Racing Point supposedly cannot be the only money that he's receiving from Daddy Stroll. There's just no way. And moving on to AlphaTauri. I almost put these guys down as Toro Rosso in my notes, but managed to remember, got the name change. So our first driver is Daniel Kvyat. He stayed the same as last year as well, £230,000. Red Bull have continuously messed him about. Obviously, he used to have the seat in Toro Rosso, then went off to Red Bull, and then got scrapped and moved out for the big boy Max Verstappen, who we will definitely be talking about later. But I feel like Daniel is just a little bit screwed in his Formula 1 career. He's never ever going to be able to move back to Red Bull. Like, no way in hell will he move back to Red Bull. They cannot let that happen. They cannot allow for a driver that they've dropped in the past to then come back and start doing really well at their top team. That just can't happen for their image. So realistically, he's just a seat holder. His wage isn't going to be changing for this year, and will he stay into 2021? We'll have to wait and see. They haven't really said too much about it, but even if he does, realistically, I don't think his wage will change particularly, and it hasn't this year. And his teammate, Pierre Gasly, for 2021. So he obviously started 2019 in the big boy main Renault seat. So his wage has fallen by over £600,000 from last year, down to 340,000. So he had over £1 million in the bank last year, and now he's fallen off a little bit. Feel a little bit bad for him. He did have poor performance at Red Bull at the first half of the season last year, but this could be debated, and you can debate how well he did versus Albon and everything like that. That's very up in the air, but all I can tell you is he has lost a huge chunk of money from messing up that first half of the season. So just to say, Pierre, unlucky mate. I feel like Albon has that seat covered off now, and Pierre mate, you've lost your milli, unlucky. Haha, okay, time to talk about Renault. So we have the new driver, Esteban Ocon, who's coming back into Formula 1, thank God. I do quite like Esteban Ocon, I cannot lie. But he's been a little bit screwed by his year out. He's being paid £1.3 million next year to race with Renault. That's quite a high wage for someone coming back in. He's still a lot less than his ex-teammate Sergio Perez, who was on 2.5. But this year he's being paid over $2 million less than Hülkenberg got paid last year, and also he's being paid $1 million less than Force India paid him in 2018. So I don't know if that shows less faith that Renault are putting in him, giving less money to him, or they just had to do less to entice him back to Formula 1 because he really didn't have many other options. So now they have this new French team, French driver partnership. Oh, big up the French boys. But we'll have to wait and see. Will he impress with the new team? If he does well, if he even beats Daniel Ricciardo, that would be amazing. If he did that, then I'm sure his wage would absolutely skyrocket for 2021. So as I was saying, his teammate, Daniel Ricciardo, being paid slightly more than Esteban Ocon, I can't lie. He's being paid $25.2 million to be with Renault. Absolute stonks there, Daniel. Absolute stonks. So, sadly, actually, his wage fell around £1 million from his last year wage. But I assume that Renault had to create such a giant wage to entice Ricciardo away from Red Bull. Obviously, he was having problems with Red Bull, and it was a bit rocky. But equally, I feel like if Renault had tried to pay him a similar amount as he was being paid at Red Bull, he would have just stayed on, because Red Bull were a known team. Even though Renault were saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to be able to do this, we're going to be able to do this," Red Bull were tried and proven and whatever. Also, with Renault having problems and not quite living up to what they claimed they could in 2019, it's tough to keep the wage at such a high level, because they're going to be having trouble with sponsors, keeping sponsors, because they haven't kept their promises. So they're going to have to pull their finger out next year if they want to keep giving him such a high wage, and equally just keep him in general, because if the car does not perform this year and Daniel really cannot get the pace out of the car again, I'm not sure what he's going to do if he's going to leave Formula 1. Will a seat open up for him at another team? We'll have to wait and see. Now we move on to one of my favourite teams, obviously one of online fan favourites. Of course, I'm talking about the Orange Boys, Papaya Boys, McLaren. So the first, we're going to talk about the milkman, Lando Norris. He's being paid £340,000 this year. So he was the highest paid rookie last year, but his wage has been increased further this year by £140,000, because he had a solid performance in 2019, decent performance. He had a few periods that would let him down, sometimes not even due to his own fault, such as in Spa when his car broke down the last lap. Oh, felt so bad for him that race. But equally, yeah, I felt he definitely deserved a small pay rise, but nothing huge. He still needs to prove himself as a definite result getter at McLaren, but equally very solid. Good effort. And his teammate, Chile man, Carlos Sainz, being paid £3 million this year. So this has stayed the same as last year. He hasn't had an increase. I feel like McLaren had to put up a reasonable chunk, more than he was getting with Red Bull. and obviously then he got pied off to Renault a little bit, but like they were still under Red Bull sort of supervision, bit of a weird one. So they had to give him quite a reasonable pay cut, but they haven't needed to increase it this year. He's showed fantastic form at McLaren, better than he's done at every other team, and that's definitely because he feels more secure. He has a longer contract, better money coming in, and he's not thinking every race, oh my god, I'm going to be kicked out of this team any minute, I need to put in performance, stressful. However, as obviously these results are coming in, both from Sainz and Norris, McLaren, even though they've had their decreasing amount of budget over the past sort of 5-6 years, where they've not had particularly great performance, as the results continue to come into 2020, possibly their wages will go up in 2021, or maybe he could even be moving teams. Another thing we'll have to wait and see. I think I've said that about 20 times this video. Finally, we move on to the top 3 teams, starting off with Red Bull. So they obviously now have Alex Albon instead of Pierre Gasly in their secondary seat, and he's being paid £1 million to race with them this year. This has increased from only £130,000 at the start of last year. Obviously, this is when he was with Toro Rosso, the B team, which is now AlphaTauri. Oh my goodness, so many names. And I couldn't find any data on wages for how it changed mid-season. I wasn't too sure about that. So he's increased by like 850 grand since the start of last year, which fair play Albon. Albon is securing the bag with Red Bull. And then his teammate, Max Verstappen, Red Bull have now put all of their eggs into the Max basket because he's now signed a new deal, a new contract to take him through to 2025. That is crazy far in the future. We thought possibly, or all of us thought, that maybe there'd be a move to Mercedes, maybe even Ferrari, crazy, to give him a proper title shot, but that hasn't happened. He signed this new contract with Red Bull. It shows that he has potential, and that he really trusts the team and the car, that they can make a championship winning car, because obviously they've got a very, very good chassis under them, and they've been able to win races in the past, but it's usually at tracks that favour them. They really need to be able to get a solid all-round package for all of the tracks, like Mercedes have been able to do time and time again, so they can really break through. And this could happen in 2021. But if it doesn't, then Max is absolutely screwed because he's signed for this 2025 contract. So I don't know if that's really, really, really well done in the long term, or if he's absolutely ruined it in the short term. But equally, I've just forgotten, I'm supposed to be talking about wages in this video, not my opinion. His wage has increased by £10 million since his previous contract, which was obviously last year. So now he's going to be earning £33.7 million from Red Bull. That, oh my goodness, astonishing numbers. So we move on to the Tifosi. Start with young gun Charles Leclerc. He is earning £7.6 million this year because he's absolutely proved himself as a world-class talent this year. So Ferrari have decided to increase his wage by around £5 million, a solid effort. As I said, he proved himself last year with Ferrari, getting 7 pole positions and 2 wins. In my opinion, completely outclassing Sebastian Vettel. In others, possibly not, but we can definitely say in the points charts, he beat Sebastian. So he's in a similar sort of position to Verstappen, where he's sort of the future of Ferrari pushing forward, because I think Vettel needs to be out relatively soon. Ferrari haven't really put all their eggs in his basket as such, like Red Bull have done. But a similar sort of thing, extending his contract to 24, giving him more money, etc, etc. And Sebastian Vettel, Mr. Spinner, has stayed with the same wage as last year, 33.7 million, another huge one. Same as Max Verstappen, I believe. Yeah, same as Max Verstappen. Obviously, Ferrari, he hasn't done particularly well that we would expect from Sebastian Vettel, but equally I feel like Ferrari can't drop his wage at all. That's going to show that they have disbelief in him, and honestly I don't think they do. I really do feel that they feel he can bring it back in 2020, but if he doesn't, we'll have to see if he stays with Ferrari or not. And finally, moving on to the big boys, the big winners every year, Mercedes. So number 2 driver, Mr. Valtteri Bottas, even though he doesn't like to be the number 2 driver, He's earning £6.5 million in 2020, which is staying the same as last year. So he's slowly been improving from last year. Definitely gave more of a title fight in 2019 than he did in 2018. But nothing particularly stood out to cause a pay increase necessary. But equally, it's very tough to show that you're improving, that you're doing well, when the person you can only really be compared to is a 6-time world champion. Like, fair play to Bottas for giving it a good go, but it was always going to be tough. Speaking of which, Lewis Hamilton has increased his payout somehow. How does it keep increasing? Obviously, is the highest paid at £42.2 million. Wow, I wish I had that. But even a slight increase of 2 million, I guess maybe for winning the driver's title again. Mercedes just saying, yeah, cheers lad, thanks for doing that again. But 2 mil really isn't very much for Hamilton, even though it'd be great for any of us. 2 mil really isn't that much, but he is the best driver in the world, so he does deserve the biggest paycheck. And also remember that this list only includes what Mercedes are paying him directly. This has nothing to do with his Tommy Hilfiger sponsorships and all of that. Just he's been making hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions you cannot even fathom. He is a new breed of racing driver, really dispersing himself out among culture, and I personally think it's fantastic that he's doing so and getting involved with all this other stuff. But equally, some people really don't like him for it, so it's up to your opinion. So a couple of fun facts that I've learnt from making this list. So the difference between the highest paid and the lowest paid driver on the grid, obviously not including Latifi because I can't really compare zero with someone, but George Russell in the Williams is earning 160k, whereas Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes is earning 42.2 million. That's a difference of £42 million. Unlucky Russell. Russell can go on and ask Hamilton for a little bit of pocket money if he gets lucky. And then the largest discrepancy between teammates obviously includes the Mercedes again. Lewis Hamilton to Valtteri Bottas, a difference of 35.7 million. Imagine being in the same garage as someone and knowing that they're getting paid £35 million more than you to do the same thing. Unlucky Bottas, mate. So that is it for today's list. Thank you very much for joining me on the Moto Meerkat channel. I hope you've been enlightened by these statistics that I've collated in this video. Did any of the wages shock you? Because they were too high, too low? Let me know in the comments below. Drop a like if you've enjoyed, and subscribe to the channel because I make new motorsport related content very regularly. Thanks again for your continued support, and I'll see you next time. See you later, guys.